Hey Simon, it's Stuart here. Thanks so much for your question. It's a really good one, and I'm sorry it's taken me a few days to get back to you. But I just wanted to have a really deep think about your question. Although it should be one that's sort of very easy for me to answer, I wanted to make sure that my response was well considered. The reason I wrote my book, Investopoly, is that I would often have discussions meet people and have discussions with them, of course, and they would say something to me like, well, Stuart, we're in this position. We just really don't know what's next. What should we do? Buy an investment property, invest in shares, contribute to super, focus on debt reduction. What should we do? And I thought, well, to me, the answer is relatively simple, but that's easy because I've been doing it for more than 20 years. So it should be easy. What I thought is, well, if we just followed a couple of simple concepts, that would help us answer the question, what should I do next? And that's how the idea of Investopoly began, was to set out the 8 rules that people should follow in terms of answering that question. So your question, Simon, is what else should you do apart from following the content? Well, my answer is, I think the answer is in the content. Um, if I take you through it, it's really step by step. It's really manage cash flow really well. I mean, that's the first step, right? Is to have a surplus investable cash flow. If you're spending all your income, of course, there's not much you can do in terms of building wealth. You've really got to spend less than you earn and invest the difference regularly. And then the next step is to work out, what should your next step be, given where you are in your life cycle. I will post in my reply below this video, I'll post a link to a blog that contains a video that I recorded a few years ago that sort of takes you through a life cycle. So, you really need to build wealth in 2 steps. You firstly need to build your asset base, and then you need to tilt towards income, because obviously we want passive income to replace our earned income eventually in retirement. But we can't invest primarily for income today because that's going to create too many tax consequences. Plus, it's a really lazy way in order to build wealth. What you really want to benefit is compounding capital growth. So that's why you need to do it in 2 shots, which is first build your asset base. If someone walks into my office with a net worth of 10 million bucks and says, develop a retirement strategy, that's really easy. If they've got $100,000, I can't build a retirement strategy. I'm not a magician. So the first thing is to build your asset base, and the best way to do that is invest in assets that give you most of the return in capital growth and use gearing. So those 2 descriptors equal invest in property. Once you already have a good base in property, or your cash flow doesn't allow you to acquire more, we'll then start diversifying additional super contributions, invest in the share market, both of which, in terms of investment strategies, I talk about in Investopoly. The other things you need to do is make sure you have enough insurance. For most people, their strategy is premised on the idea that they're going to be able to get out of bed and go to work in the morning for the next 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it might be. So, of course, if you have an illness and you can't do that, your investment strategy fails, and therefore it's prudent to protect against that risk. So the most important product there is income protection insurance, that's going to pay you a benefit if you're unable to go to work due to accidental illness. And then you've got to think about life and TPD insurance in case, you pass away or become permanently disabled. And again, you need to provide for your loved ones. So make sure you've got enough insurance, make sure super's well invested. And I write a blog every year that in about July, August, early August, late July, that compares performance and talks about, which fund I think is the best. And at the moment, I think UniSuper is the best. So I've kind of given you the answer there. And then make sure you've got wills in place. And if you've got children and a lot of assets in personal name, include a testamentary trust in that will. Make sure you have binding death benefit nominations against your super accounts. And that's pretty much it, like in terms of being able to put some simple advice together. You're going to find how to manage cash flow. I talk about that in Investopoly. I talk about the life cycle of investing and the importance of investing for growth first and then income later. That's all in Investopoly. I talk about strategies to invest in property versus shares. Again, that's all in Investopoly. So I would argue you have the tools and knowledge in front of you to be able to answer those questions. The times when you might want to seek advice is when we're talking about large amounts, large investment amounts. That's when it's worthwhile, because obviously when seeking financial advice, you're going to pay a fee for that. Now, if I'm going to pay someone $5,000 a year, let's say I'm going to pay them therefore 50 grand over the next 10 years. Well, if I'm doing that, I want at least $100 million worth of value. Whatever it is, I want substantially more value than I'm paying. Well, the only way an advisor has scope to add value is if the assets and the investment options are vast. So if you're investing more than, say, $5,000 to $7,000 a month, it starts to warrant advice, because how well you do, and if you're going to do that consistently over the next 10 years, getting your investment decisions perfect will make a big impact on the value in 10 years' time. Whereas if you're investing $500 a month, you don't really have to get it perfect. You've just got to avoid making a huge mistake. And I think that's relatively easy, because most of the answers are included in my blogs or books, or other people's blogs and books for that instance. So yes, you might not be in a position where it warrants paying financial advice, and that's fine. But I think you've got enough knowledge available to you in order to work out, what is the right steps for you. And then it's just a question if and when you get to a point where the dollar value is so large that, you start to think, well, even just a 5 or 10% improvement to the strategy will have big impact. Then that's the time it is to reach out to get some specific or personalised financial advice. But it's a great question. And we could talk about, in fact, how the industry, unfortunately, is now has to be skewed towards, people with a lot more money, just because the cost to deliver advice is so large. That is not the industry's fault. That is 100% the government's fault. Both sides of government, by the way, have absolutely butchered the financial advice industry, and unfortunately pushed it in a situation where, a lot of people that really could benefit from advice just can't afford it. And I would love the luxury of being able to help a lot more people, but I'll get off my soapbox now. It wasn't really the question you're asking. Anyway, thanks for the question. I hope that's helpful, and all the best. Good luck.